Hello, Jambo, Karibu, welcome to my channel. My name is Chilanda and this is Library Without Borders. The book that I will be reviewing today, and it is NJINGA, Queen of Angola, Africa's Warrior Queen by Linda M. Haywood. So this book is actually a historical novel and it's all facts. I looked at the back of her book. I saw that she had to read quite an extensive array of books just to come up with this story. And this book is about 262 pages, but boy oh boy does it hold a lot of information. All right, so obviously we're talking about this African warrior, right? Like when you hear about African warriors, woo-hoo, it's not just Xena and all that good stuff. I mean, we had our own little our big warrior called NJINGA. So yay. Anyways, so before we all celebrate and are all proud to be descendant of this Queen NJINGA, let's hear her story, because some of us might be like, oh, okay, well, I'm glad I wasn't born into that royalty line. You know, just being normal is okay sometimes. But anyways, before I even get into the gist of what this story is about, I want to read you a little excerpt of the book. It goes as follows. NJINGA's story is important on many different levels. On one level, it is a significant chapter in the history of resistance to colonialism. Throughout the 400 years of Portuguese occupation of Angola, 1575-1975, resistance never stopped. NJINGA's place as the most successful of the African rulers in resisting the Portuguese influenced not only Portuguese colonialism in Angola, but also the politics of liberation and independence in modern Angola. NJINGA's life and history also had implications for the Americas. Africans captured by the Portuguese or purchased in the region where NJINGA lived and ruled were sent as slaves to Brazil and Spanish America, and were the first Africans to arrive in the North American colonies. These slaves brought NJINGA's story and memory with them. But NJINGA's life and action transcend African history and the history of slavery in Africa and the Americas. Her story reveals larger themes of gender, power, religion, leadership, colonialism, and resistance. And I think when we read this story, that's what we should really remember, because we have to remember that the times back then and these modern times were different. People then and people today, we don't think the same way. So NJINGA did what she had to do because it was during that time, like it was time where people held slaves, people had slaves, people practiced all kinds of practices that may really be unholy today, but it was what was happening during that time. So what I took from this story, guys, is that she was a warrior and she fought against Portuguese, because Portuguese invaded Ndongo, which is Matamba, which is Angola today. And they invaded those lands in order not only to buy and sell slaves, but they were also there to convert us Black people, because they found that our beliefs, our religion, what we did, what we believed, what was sacred to us was unholy. So that was their second goal, to convert all of us Africans to Christianity. You heard me correctly. They had to convert us Blacks to Christianity because us savages didn't have a better religion. We didn't know who the true God was, okay? So they had to bring us their God, their Jesus, so that us Blacks could be saved by Jesus Christ. Okay. So, guys, I want to give you a little idea of what the kingdom of Queen NJINGA looked like and how close her kingdom was to my country. Oh, I'll get to it. to my country. Just hold on. Just hold on. So, as you can see, this is my country, the Republic Democratic of Congo. And this is Angola. This is Angola. And then here you have the Republic of Congo, which is today Congo Brazzaville. And then you have here, it says Mbanza, Congo. And yes, guys, slavery also occurred in my country. As you can see, those lands were intertwined, okay? And I don't know if you know this, but Africa was divided by the colonizers. We, as Africans, knew our borders, you know, because we had different tribes, so we knew which lands we held. So when the white people came, they came and said, this will be Congo, that will be Rwanda, this will be, and so on. The kingdom that Queen NJINGA ruled over was mostly in Banza, Congo. That's where most of the people were based and concentrated. And that's where most of the wars that took during the 30 years that she fought the Portuguese were happening. Banza, Congo, so it had its own administration, it had its own people, it had its own way of doing things. They even had their own armies, they had their own taxes, like their own tax laws. So Banza Congo was established, okay? They were not savages as we've always been portrayed. They had their own way of ruling their land. So in 1483, the Portuguese invade the kingdom. They were under the reign of King Alfonso. And it is at that time that they started implementing. Not, why am I saying implementing? It is that time that they started imposing religion to the people of Congo or Ndongo or Angola. So once the Portuguese settled in Angola, they basically had three different classes. We had the Fidalgos, who were the elites, the people residing in courts. Then we had the free people, who were just called genti, I think. And then we had the escravos, the slaves. Yes, you heard correctly. And we also want to talk about the women. The women in that society held high positions. They were not like under the men or had lower position. No, they were privy to important information, and they were also there were high priestesses in the African culture. Because again, you have to remember that there was the Portuguese cultures and they were the people of NJINGA's culture. So going back to Queen NJINGA, I just want to give you a little bit of her predecessors, the people that came before her. I want to give you just a little background on who she is, where she was coming from, and her royal lineage. So guys, you'll have to excuse me because I want to get these dates correctly. Okay, so I took notes. So 1515 to 1556, founder and first historical king of Dongo, Ngola Kilwanje Kia Samba. 1575-1592, next ruler is NJINGA's grandfather, Ngola Kilombo Kia Kasenda. 1592-1617, next ruler, Kasenda's son, Mbande Angola. 1617 to 1624, NJINGA's brother, Ngola Mbande. NJINGA grew in times that were extremely difficult because war was a daily happening. It was happening all the time. So all she knew was war. So it's only befitting that she takes up arms eventually. And I want to say one thing, as I think you heard me mention at the beginning of the video, that she practiced fratricide, which is the killing of one's brother. Now, the way it's explained in the book, it's to basically remove all conquest, to remove all rivalry. So they needed to kill sometimes a whole family, guys. Like, there's a point in the book where Jinga kills a whole family. Like, I mean, uncles, his wife, his kids, and not just the brother. So that's one thing about the queen that I was like, And secondly, they also talk about the whole cannibalism. You heard me mention that. So when she was fighting these wars, she actually made a few allies in order to fight the Portuguese. You have to understand that you needed to have allies. And some of these allies were coming from tribes that practice cannibalism. And because she was associated with them, the story went that she also practiced cannibalism, but there's no proof to show that she did. Those people were called the Imbangala. So those people were another tribe found in that land. She actually married the guy in that tribe in order to have their loyalty so that they could fight the Portuguese people. And throughout the book, guys, I mean, I don't want to make this video too long, but it's a book worth reading. But throughout the book, there are all these wars happening during her reign, during Jinga's reign, and way before, but I'm talking about her reign. And the Portuguese army were just so strong. They actually managed to hold more land than Jinga's people held. And they were so relentless in their need to provide slaves for their colonies outside, but also within Angola. And get this, guys, some of the Congolese people as well were involved. Involved how? They were being sold. I'm not saying that there were no Congolese people that, and when I say Congolese, back then it was with a K. Congo, K-O-N-G-O. So those people of the K-O-N-G-O who are, I don't want to say separated from us Congolese people because obviously it's the same land, but I'm saying that those people were also unfortunately intertwined in this travesty that we call the slave trade. Right? So during 1631, 1635, she manages to capture a little bit of the lands that the Portuguese owned with the help of the Imbangala people. And those people were known to be cruel. When I mean cruel, cruel. Guys, I read some things here. For you to believe me, I just have to read it, okay? So wait for it. The Imbangala bands also engaged in human sacrifice to honor recently deceased warriors, but such practices as well as cannibalism were routine occurrences. Many of the Igila focused on the role of women. There were laws that required women to kill their children at birth, prevented women from giving birth within the Quilombo, placed restriction on sexual relationships, and allowed women to be sacrificed at the funerals of their deceased male concubines. The ritual that required the slaying of one's own child is almost unthinkable to our modern minds, though similar rituals are found in many cultural mythologies, including the Judeo-Christian tradition. So before you go and start calling us savages, just look at your own religion. Tembo and Dembo supposedly murdered her own son by pounding him in a mortar, from which she made the oil that in Jinga's day was known as mai, a samba, holy oil. This brutal act became the first Kijila. From that point on, Imbangala warriors were expected to slather themselves with oil made from a human, preferably an enemy killed in battle. If this ritual couldn't be completed before battle, the soldier was required to carry a mortar and pestle in order to make the oil on the battlefield from the bodies of slain enemies. Guys, I'm so sorry that I have to share this, but these are facts. These are historical facts. Maybe she did not practice it, but the people with whom she allied herself with practiced that ritual. It is unthinkable, guys. Deep breath. This is not what Jinga represented, and this is not what I want us to focus when we read her story, because although those are factual events that happen, we have to remember that Jinga fought these wars to push back against the Portuguese that were trying to invade their lands, but also impose their religion on them. She was a ruler, and she kept saying in the book, when she tells her story, that she's of descendant of royalty. She could not be a subject. She could not be subjected to slavery or to be a subordinate to the Portuguese people. Hence, what she fought and became allies to certain tribes that had quite different ways or rituals of dealing with their enemies and even their own people. And also, I want to talk about her influence with the people bordering her land, including my country. And I want to read you just a little excerpt of her influence with my country. The invasion of the Congolese province of Wandu in September of that year, described in chapter 5, had come out of NJINGA's desire to demonstrate to the local ruler there that she could still impose her will in the regions bordering Dongo. So basically, not only was she a fierce warrior, but she also imposed fear on other kingdoms, because she was trying to make a point that although she's fighting against the Portuguese, she will take you on as well, other African kingdoms. But she also wanted them to know that in her fight against the Portuguese, if they were not with her, then they were against her, which means if she fought you, she caught you, you best know that you're going to be sold to the slave traders there and shipped across. And that's what she did. Whatever country was not with her, whenever they were captured, those captives, or if they were not kept with her, maybe because she had too many, they were sent away. I want to talk about the fact that slave trade was the currency during that time. So it says here, slaves and 200 benzos. A benzo was a set of trade items equivalent to one slave. So back then, the currency was slave. So that's all they had. They didn't have money like us. They didn't have cryptos. They didn't have all that kind of jewelries, all of that. They probably had jewelries, different jewelries, but it was not the same value as we would give them, in our modern days. So the currency back then was slave trading. This woman fought, and she's tired, right? She wants to have peace for her country. Her next step is now basically transforming her land into a Christian land. The next step in NJINGA's program was to transform her followers into Christians and to build a Christian community in Dongo Matamba on her terms and under her royal leadership. So she knew that she could not fight the Portuguese endlessly and forever. She was getting older. She knew she was not invincible. She was going to die eventually. So in order to keep her part, because there's the Portuguese Angola and then her Ndongo Matamba, in order to keep it in her lineage for her people, she needed to be diplomatic. There was another fight that she could not keep resisting, and that was her people being converted to Christianity. She knew that in order for them to be transformed, she would have to be baptized, which she did. She got baptized and became a Christian, a devout Christian. And for the remainder of her years, her next big goal was to get her people to convert to Christianity. And boy, oh boy, did she meet resistance. She met resistance because some of them people they're called Ngangas, okay, which are witch doctors, call them whatever you want. But some of those people had their own beliefs and they did not believe in white people's religion, And at some point in the book, I think they say, I don't believe in someone who dies and there's a hell fire. It's just, I can't find that part, but I was laughing. I'm like, yeah, these people believed in their ancestors. Yes, guys, there were sacrifices that were horrible, horrible, horrible. I'm not saying Christianity should not have made its way to Africa, okay? All I'm saying is that we would have eventually stopped sacrificing people and eating people. People evolve. Who knows? Without the invasion of Europeans, Portuguese, and Dutch, and Dutch people were also there. And at some point, she uses the Dutch people to push back against the Portuguese, and which she succeeds. And so the Dutch becomes an ally for her against the Portuguese. And for some time, they have a relationship there, you know, all great. But you know, you can never trust the white man. You can never trust the white man. No offense to my white followers, but I'm talking in this time. I don't know about today, but I'm talking about these times. And you know what? The Dutch also had an agenda. Just like every European people that comes into Africa, it's never, let's be friends, and then what? What do I get in return, right? Anyway, so I want to read this part, you guys. By early March 1657, her capital, whose name she had changed to Santa Maria de Matamba in honor of the church she had built, boasted 2,506 baptized Christians, and many of their subjects were attending catechism classes. Among the earliest converts were many of NJINGA's officials, including 80 Makotas, lineage heads, and their wives. During this period, both NJINGA and Barbara devoted all their attention to the church. Barbara, I didn't talk to her, but was her sister. She also played a very important role in the life of NJINGA. Devoted all their attention to the church, attending services 3 times a week and participating in the Holy Procession, a weekly Friday event in which the people joined Father Gaeta as he carried the Holy Crucifix around the plaza. During these processions, 6 young Bundu men did penance by beating themselves with iron chains. Hey, I mean, that's Christianity. You know, people beat themselves with chains. That's holy. That's not barbaric. That's holy, guys. The goal here for Queen NJINGA was to let the Portuguese know that she was serious about peace, but she was also serious about her newfound religion, which means it put her and the Portuguese on the equal spiritual level. That was the whole point of her becoming a Christian. So, guys, I don't want this video to be too long, but what I want to say is that Queen NJINGA did what she had to do to preserve her land, her people, her culture. And at the same time, she also had to give some in order to gain some, which was convert to Christianity. That was essentially the review of this book. Now, my own personal thoughts, guys. As I said, I know Africans played a role in the slave trade. The amount of slaves that this queen, I will spare you, traded every time she captured a land, every time she needed to gift the priests or an ambassador that would come, it was always gifts of like 100 slaves, 100 slaves, 100 slaves, slaves. It's unbelievable. But guys, again, I realized that was the currency back then. And those slaves were people that were captured. They were captured. I know they were humans, but they were captured. And it was during a time where slavery was being practiced in Africa. Okay, so she did what she had to do. And today, in our modern time, it is unthinkable. It's unconceivable to imagine such atrocities. I'm not saying that if I were the queen and I lived during that time, I wouldn't do what I have to do. You guys, you never know until you're in a position of like, it's a do or die. You know what I mean? And her position, it was a do or die position every day of her life. She grew up in times of war, and that's all she knew. She grew up in times where slaves was normal. She didn't know better. There was no other ways that she could have been made aware of. So she grew up in such time, and she needed to practice what she knew. And although Christianity, I'm going to say this with a little bit of grain of salt. Christianity did make a little difference in the fact that because of Christianity, cannibalism had to be banished. Certain practices had to be banished, so sacrifices and all of that. Okay, I will give it to Christianity, fine. But I am also of opinion that we would have moved on from it. Yes, albeit other people would have died already. We would have evolved. We are human. We would have evolved. Okay? All right, guys. So I hope I did justice in bringing you the story of Queen NJINGA. I still believe that she is someone to be to know. She's someone to be respected. She was a woman. She was a warrior. And yes, she wasn't perfect, but she is a historical figure among other royalties that we know around the world that needs her story to be told. Guys, that's it. I have concluded my review on NJINGA of Angola. And by the way, today in Angola, there's a big statue of her in Angola to honor her. And I think somewhere in Brazil, there's all these folklore story, like a lot of Brazilian people actually, know of NJINGA and respect her. So we best do the same, okay? I hope you like this video. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. What I say? Subscribe, okay? Bye. I'll see you in my next video.